All right, I think we got Jasper in New Zealand on.
Hello?
Hey, Jasper.
Alright, I wanted to talk a little bit about feminism, I guess, or ask you guys, and it's kind of good that your guest is here, because it kind of relates to it. Why do you think feminism is needed, I guess?
That's a very big question that you just asked. Well, where do we start? Why don't we, well, someday I'll do a screen cap of my email inbox and my other folder on Facebook. We can start there. I mean, the differences, you know, in the way that people treat men versus people like me is staggering, and people don't always realize that that's the case because they're not living it every single day. You know, things like, you know, not being able to check my messages without someone, you know, hurling abuse on me based on my looks or based on what they perceive to be my lack of adherence to gender norms. You know, and this is a very sort of mundane thing for me, but, you know, it's a problem. I shouldn't have to live my life like that. Or, you know, even going out of my house and walking on the street, no matter what I'm wearing, being treated like I'm public property to be commented on, or to be, you know, treated like nothing but a sexual piece of meat. That's not okay. And the whole point of feminism is to say that's not okay. We shouldn't just lay down and take it. We should be able to stand up and say this is wrong, and this is obviously hindering people in their development as human beings and their lives and their dignity. And yeah, so that's a start. That's a start for why we need feminism.
And I think for me, it seems obvious to me that we're not post-sexism.
No.
And it can be, sometimes it's, you know, obvious things that cause a huge problem, and sometimes, and I'm not trying to pick on a previous caller, but sometimes it's little things, like someone who calls in and has a conversation with us and tells Heina that she's beautiful and wonderful and implies that I'm smart. I mean, that's a disparity in how you're viewing the two people who are talking. And it's not like, oh my gosh, let's go find that guy and beat him up for being, you know, terrible. That's not it. It's about having a conversation that raises people's awareness so that they can perhaps be more considerate about their actions towards people.
So really it's just like social issues and stuff with like, you know, we need to stop street harassment, we need to stop online harassment against women, and like, you know, small kind of compliments and stuff.
It's not really a compliment to only be told you're there for decoration. I don't think it's a compliment when my intellect is never addressed, even though I'd like to think I'm kind of smart and have some good things to say.
I don't know what his intentions were, obviously, but I think it was just like he was paying Matt a compliment, and he was like, oh, I better compliment her as well.
It may just have been the case that I'm not pretty enough to compliment on being pretty, and so he had to come up with something else.
But either way, you know, it's not one instance. It's these instances over and over. It's death by a million paper cuts. It's, you know, never getting to hear about how smart I am, which I'd like to think I am. Maybe I'm not, I don't know. But it's not just social issues, though. There's economic issues. You know, there's things that sort of compound and compound and compound, you know. The fact that, you know, equal pay for equal work is still not something that we have. You know, there's still so many times, and especially I would say, I don't know how it is out in New Zealand, but in the United States it's considered gauche to talk about your income, and that ends up being a problem because you find out that, you know, the lady who's been working there for 20 years is making way less than the guy that's been working there for 10 years. So that's also a systemic problem. The lack of support, especially in the U.S., for families is a problem too, you know. The number one indicator, like, I think the number one demographic group that lives in poverty is single mothers. There's just no support for people who, you know, they talk about family values, but it's not really a family value. It's, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and it just ends up affecting women more. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of problems. Let's go international with it. You know, why is it, you know, forced marriages, child brides, female genital mutilation, you know, the list goes on and on. You know, women have just been picked on throughout history more than men, and in different and more intense ways than men. And I'm not discounting, of course, men have problems too, and there's social class issues, you name it. But yeah, there's a particular problem there.
And I think a lot of this is anytime we label something, no matter what the label is, we're putting something there that is a shortcut to a broad collection of ideas that we're trying to package together. And the truth is, because not everybody who identifies as a feminist agrees on everything or on every single issue, that this gives, like, people get to pick out of the 10 different varieties that end up labeled feminist. There's probably not that many, or maybe there's more, who knows. The people who don't understand are objecting to this one while talking to someone who's in this position. I mean, because we've had discussions about porn. There are feminists who are opposed to porn, and there are feminists who are every bit in favor of porn. And then just saying you're a feminist doesn't tell you what your position is on that particular issue.
But I mean, I feel like people pick on feminism more for that than other things. You know, there are atheists who believe in crystals, but we don't get into giant flame wars over those in the way that people get about feminism. And there's also straw feminists everywhere. Because if I make a statement about, you know, gender, people get this whole different idea of what I just said because they don't like the idea of a woman standing up, and that's just proving sexism right there. But yeah, you know, people have misconstrued my views many times, or have said things that they've taken things I've said and somehow spun them out into these ridiculous things. But yeah, there's no question. And, you know, feminists are allowed to have different opinions, just like atheists are allowed to have different opinions. And sometimes we're both, you know.
Well, I'd like to talk about, first I'd agree that, you know, social issues could kind of be remedied with, you know, government help. But on the wage gap, have you actually looked into it? Because you might find, you said there are equal pay for equal work. There are actually physical laws, right, that you can't pay somebody differently based on their gender.
And there's also laws against murder, but people still get murdered. I mean...
Okay, when you actually look at it, the discrepancy of the 78% that's toted...
She didn't mention the number, did she?
No, I did not mention the number because I knew you would pick on it. That's why I didn't.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, is it perfectly equal?
Is it perfectly equal? When you take out those factors, like when you actually compare same work to same work, it's 95%. But once you take
wait. So you're saying that it's 95%?
Yes, but then when you take into account working hours and wage negotiation, it basically closes.
But those are gendered issues because women are assumed to be the child caretakers and men do not pull their share of the housework the second shift. So of course women aren't going to stay till 9 p.m. at work. They're going to go home at 6 because someone needs to feed the damn kids. You know, and that's a gender issue too. And then you talked about negotiation. Women are trained from birth to be submissive, to say, oh, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you. Please pay me with your peanuts. You know, it's only recently that people have been saying, hey, you know, maybe women should stand up more for ourselves. But at the same time, there's a socialization issue that's not easy to overcome. The first time I negotiated a salary, I was peeing my pants because I, you know, was a recession-era graduate and, you know, I was happy to have a job and I didn't want to lose my job. And, you know, I've been trained from birth to be nice, to be grateful, to be demure. I know it's hard to believe right now in this moment that that's true.
But I think the big thing here is that, you know, let's say there was no issue with the pay gap. Clearly, we still are not living in a post-sexist society. Clearly, we don't have equality everywhere.
And then there's the issue, too, of certain work being associated with women, the pink-collar ghetto, as they call it. And if work becomes associated with women, people value it less. So things like emotional labor, things like taking care.
I think it's more just supply and demand. Like, if more people are willing to do the work and it doesn't take as many skills to do the work, then it will get paid less, you know?
That's not necessarily true. I mean, the people, think about office managers and assistants at your work. How much work do they do? But that work isn't considered to be valuable because it's not, you know, writing code or something. But yet, they're doing a lot of the work. They're dealing with people's personal issues, and they're doing valuable work that's indispensable. But because it's associated with women, they think it's not worth anything.
There's plenty of men that do those jobs as well, and they get paid the same.
Yes, because it's associated with women, though. They're doing a job that's
requiring the skill set to do it. You don't need to take a massive university course to, you know, do that kind of work.
okay, but that's not the issue. What I was saying is that, okay, so first of all, there are men who do that work, but the work is associated with women, and it's associated with not having skills. Could you, I mean, the office manager at my work, I don't think I could do that job. I mean, I'm in a traditionally masculine position with what I do in tech, but the people who do the softer work, you can't go to school to learn how to juggle 10 people's schedules and tell the CEO bad news in a soft, nice way that'll make him not flip out. You can't take a university level course for it, but it is valuable work and it is difficult work. But people think, oh, because you didn't study in school for 5 years for it and go into debt for it, then it's not worth anything. And I think that's a problem too.
You could spend $100,000 to get a degree that's completely useless for a job that doesn't pay anything. So I don't see how that's relevant at all.
Well, I'm basically saying that those jobs, they aren't highly skilled jobs, I guess. Like, you don't need to get a degree in astrophysics or whatever to be able to do that. That's what I'm saying. So if those jobs don't require those skills, then they're obviously going to get paid less than someone who has a degree in,
Nobody is suggesting that your office worker should be paid exactly what a NASA scientist is paid.
No, and those are two extreme examples. There's way more room in the middle than astrophysicist versus, office manager.
I mean, for me, she didn't mention a number on the pay gap, and by the way, the pay gap's not the only thing, which was the point that I was making, but your response to the pay gap was to say, oh, it's not 78%, it's closer to 95%, and in certain situations it may close. Okay, so what?
It is pointing out there's no problem there, and the fact that it gets toted by,
So there's no problem? If you're making 95% of what somebody sitting next to you makes, that's not a problem?
Well, that's not actually what's happening. Okay, yeah, that is a problem. And
okay,
you can
thanks.
Report that to the authorities. You can report that to the authorities and actually.
Okay, you know how hard it is to report something to the authorities, honey? Like, really? I've been sexually harassed in the workplace, and there's a reason why I didn't take it to the courts. Because you have to have all this documentation. And in the United States especially, it's considered to be so gauche to talk about your income. I may not know that I'm being underpaid. I wouldn't know, because talking about your salary is considered to be like gross, like talking about, your poop in the morning. So, you may not know. There's so many confounding issues, and there obviously is a problem when just being a woman is far more likely to put you in poverty. And, even if it was that they just need to get more educated.
You mean having children? You said.
Being a woman. No, I mean, internationally speaking, though, women are more in poverty than men, whether or not they're mothers.
I mean, there's a great study where they submitted resumes for positions, and they put traditionally male names on some of them, and they put traditionally female names on others, and the percentages at which they were even called for interviews or eventually offered a position was dramatically different.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've applied for jobs with my initials before for that reason.
That's why a lot of women use their initials.
Yeah, H.O. Dadabhoy.
Yeah, like J.K. Rowling's whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Male audience, and that's why she,
But men can write books with their names, Matthew Dillahunty, and women will still buy them. Maybe women don't hate men as much.
Well, anyway, but with the wage gap, right? What is your solution to it? Because, I mean, either you're going to, I guess you could pay everyone the same, you go, full Soviet Union or something, or you could, I don't know, force women to go into like high-paying fields.
Yes, that's exactly my solution. I was born to fix this problem, and my solution is to force women to go into particular fields.
There's multiple approaches, I think, and these are things that those of us who are feminists often talk about and deal with. There's the personal approach. It's raising awareness with women that men negotiate in a much more aggressive way, and either women are going to have to negotiate more like men, which is not necessarily fair because we're raised to not do that, and you're asking us to do something different. But also for managers to recognize that and to say, okay, she's not going to.
You just said that women aren't as good at wage negotiation.
No, we are socialized to be nice.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not some genetic thing. It's because we're socialized that way. But yeah, I didn't know that I could push at work. I thought I would get fired. But then I found out that men were doing it differently, and so, I was able to push a little more. But there has to be a give and take there, There has to be, okay, women need to recognize that men push more, but also managers need to realize that women aren't necessarily going to push as much, and there needs to be sort of an understanding there.
But you asked for a solution to the problem, and first of all, neither of us are suggesting that we're going to be able to solve every problem, but one of the first things that needs to happen is you need to be able to get the people like you who are suggesting that there's no real problem here because they're sitting in a position of privilege and don't have to live
You said
a lot.
The P word.
I'll say the P word all day long because her experience of the world is different from mine. And we're not saying that you're bad or wrong for having a different experience of the world. We're just trying to wake people up to the idea that maybe what you've experienced in life is not the same as what somebody else has. Mm-hmm. And as people become more aware of this, then we can start to fix. We're not, this isn't about mandating necessarily anything. There are certain things where we may be able to act by changing laws. There are other places where we may be able to act by changing minds.
And that's actually where anti-poverty and anti-classism work really comes in. It's saying, okay, even if you don't have a giant degree in astrophysics, it's not ethical in a society, especially a developed society, for you to starve just because we think you don't have the right skills.
I think that's true. I think that's a human issue that there should be a higher minimum wage, etc.
Yeah.
You should be, fair enough. But I'm hearing a lot like the problem is social issues with harassment and stuff, and the wage gap where women aren't choosing to go into, or they aren't as good because they're being socialized a different way. But I kind of looked this up beforehand to have a look at like what are the kind of problems facing men, and I found the top 3 were parental custody, extremely biased kind of court systems, parental surrender, that's one they wanted, and genital integrity, basically saying we don't want babies to have part of their genitals cut off.
Okay, so first of all, I'm absolutely with you on forced circumcision.
That was one of the first things that made me doubt my faith, actually, was when my baby brother got circumcised, and I'm like, what the hell did they do to my baby? But as far as the parental rights issues go, it's a complicated issue, and the statistics have changed a lot over time, but, there's a lot that goes into that that's not necessarily obvious.
If you look at some of the studies, and I only have what I've read, mm-hmm. You may have different information, but by and large, the difference in custody results come from men not actually seeking custody, which is going to come from lawyers making sorry?
That is true.
Okay.
I think it's something like that.
Sure. So let me finish the thought, because some of that's going to come from lawyers about what kind of recommendations, because they have been enculturated into a system where they think there may be more of a bias than there is. When men actually push for and seek for custody, they tend to get it at pretty much even rates. But that's not to say that there's not a big problem there. And the big problem, as I see it, is strict binary gender roles that you're not going to wipe them out of culture, but you can make people more aware of them. Mm-hmm. And by and large, in much the same way that atheists are some of the most outspoken and effective protectors of church-state separation, feminists are some of the most outspoken and effective protectors of the elimination of the sort of gender norms that hurt men too. So nobody's sitting here denying that there are, but when I say we're not in a post-sexist society, there's all kinds of terrible crap. You can talk about the draft or any other number of things that are biased negatively towards men. We're not saying that the entire world, men are the beneficiaries. The truth is, pretty much everybody listening to this program right now is a beneficiary of privilege in some category or another, because this is on the internet. So you're already benefiting from some sort of privilege. And the fact that you have privilege in one area doesn't mean you're not horribly underprivileged in another. Mm-hmm. It's about kind of the trend line rather than the individual spikes.
And on top of that, like, to go back to the custody issue, often custody goes to the parent that has been demonstrated to have provided the most care. And because of sexist bullshit, it usually ends up being the mother, because she's the one who's expected to do all that work. And there's also, and that sort of goes back to gender issues, where, if we stopped expecting women to do all of the labor with childcare, then maybe men would be a little more likely to get the custody that they want sometimes. But, as it stands, it's not fair.
But I will say, because we've only got like 10 minutes left in the show, and this is going to come as no surprise that while, many of us are feminists, under various different interpretations of it, I don't see that really has that much to do with atheism or God. So I'm going to try to get to another call that might, so that this doesn't become the feminist experience.
See, I've taken over.
The reason I would associate it with atheism, and particularly your show, is because you guys are kind of a proponent of atheism plus. I see a remarkable kind of crackdown on free speech, freedom of expression. You can see this in university.
A crackdown on free speech?
Okay.
Hang on.
Here in New Zealand, last year, David Cunliffe went on TV and said he was ashamed to be a man. There is a law trying to get passed last year in New Zealand which would invert the burden of proof in rape cases. Okay? There are
I don't know.
There was a university that banned white men.
Jasper?
Because, yeah?
I don't know about what's going on in New Zealand, so I couldn't possibly comment on it. I mean, I was there recently, but...
And seriously, almost nobody still identifies with atheism plus, so that was my first sign of, where the heck is this going?
It's not even a thing, to be on a forum.
Trends, free thought blogs and stuff.
I haven't been on free thought blogs in years, even though she's still there.
I am a free thought blogger. None of us identify as atheism plus. Literally none of us.
Alright, yeah. Well, it's
and by the way,
social justice thing, with Tracy apologizing for, being ableist, and you constantly, calling people batshit crazy. It would seem there's kind of hypocrisy there.
People can have different opinions.
So Jasper,
the previous caller.
Jasper.
Yeah?
The fact that Tracy does something and I do something else doesn't get to hypocrisy. Those are two different people with two different views.
True.
You would have to be one person to be hypocritical.
And honestly, I feel like you're the one who's trying to censor, we all have to be in lockstep with each other.
And if Tracy apologizes for an ableist comment, good for her. If that's, the type of thing. So when we talk about ableism, there are some words that I generally avoid using because of the response from some people. There are other words that I'm not going to scrub from my vocabulary. I happen to disagree with some people about how wrong they are, but that's the nice thing. Even if I disagreed with them, if I said, oh, that's lame, and somebody said, oh, that's ableist, I can say, well, I will make efforts to consider that in the future, and I apologize for using that word if it offended you. On the other hand, maybe you should consider that I'm not evaluating you as a person, and I'm just acknowledging that something that has traditionally been viewed as negative, without it reflecting on you as an individual, this condition, like cancer is pretty much a negative. But there's a lot of conversations that can take place around there.
We're allowed to have nuance, we're allowed to have conversations, we're allowed to disagree with each other, et cetera, and if you expect us all to be in lockstep just because you perceive us as atheism plus or social justice warriors...
That's not at all what I said.
Okay.
I said you guys are obviously, part of the social justice crowd, so...
Yeah,
I'm not saying...
And I'm wondering why other people aren't. Do people not care about social justice?
What? I don't...
Well, there's no problem, according to him.
I think that it's a joke, personally.
You think that social justice is a joke?
Yes. Have you had a look at Shirtgate? Scientist lands something on the comment.
God.
Hey, Jasper.
Have you commented on my blog before? I think you have.
Jasper. So you think that we've achieved equality on social justice issues?
Let's go home, Matt. Let's pack it all up. We're done.
On social justice issues, what does that mean?
Well, so you're the one that said that social justice is a joke. We've talked about a number of issues related to this. I thought we were kind of in agreement that we're not in a, post-sexist, post-racist, post-anything society, that there are actually problems in society. And if you say that social justice issues are a joke, that implies that you don't think there are problems in society that are social in nature.
I'm saying that social justice as a movement is really a joke.
There's no one single social justice movement.
No,
but so,
I'm saying, okay,
Jasper,
do you agree that at least lambasting that scientist, and to the point that he cries when making a speech of apology.
Why are you so bothered that he cried?
There's nothing wrong with men crying. Stop oppressing men.
Serious, you guys talk about harassment and stuff. The biggest bullies on the internet, I know you could argue, 4chan and, those assholes, but when it comes to the biggest bullies I've seen, social justice is. They have media.
You're statistically speaking wrong. Women are the most bullied on the internet by men. Statistically speaking, there are studies, my dear. There are studies.
I keep seeing that meme pop up, and I just don't think it's true.
Well, because you haven't experienced it. Because you're not looking at the study. It's not a meme. It's a study. See, there have been multiple studies, honey.
I'm still baffled because so let's see if we can hit this really simply. Are there problems in society?
Yes.
Should we be doing something to try to correct those problems in society?
Sure.
Wouldn't that be a social justice movement?
Technically, I guess, but it's associated with more than it's associated with things that aren't even problems.
So really, you're objecting to social justice movements that you happen to disagree with, and then equating that with social justice in general in order to say that it's a joke. Instead,
and denying science because you personally haven't experienced it, and you haven't seen it.
Wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better to say, hey, you know what? We haven't fixed the world. We should definitely have social justice movements. Let's have a discussion about what the real issues are, what I think is important, what you think is important.
That's what we're doing now.
No, it's not what we're doing now.
It's not. We aren't having a discussion about issues.
No, you've
You're pulling out all these gotchas. That's what you're doing.
It's not a gotcha.
I know you're kind.
If anything, you just did a gotcha before. The whole I did the exact same thing you just did, and then you were calling it a gotcha. I mean, I'm talking about hypocrisy here.
You just claim that social justice warriors, the people who are advocating for an end to privileged positions, are the bullies. That's like Christians saying that they're persecuted.
You can't be racist against white men.
Yes, you can. I disagree with the people who say you can't be. I think you can be.
Okay, that's fair enough. So
you can be prejudiced for sure. No question.
Would you agree with that? Your guest.
Oh, you mean I don't have a name, I guess.
Your guest.
My guest. I'm Matt's guest. That's my new name.
The generic woman.
Yeah, but anyway, actually,
Are you going to call me sexist? Because
I wasn't gonna say. Oh my God, calm down. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, honey. Do you not see how that's kind of hypocritical?
What's hypocritical? Okay, the thing is, I deal with people like you all the time. I don't know if you understand that every single day I'm hearing. I'm pulling. Anyway, bottom line is racism, as I understand it, is more than just being prejudiced. So I think you can be prejudiced against white men, but racism is a whole other story. That's a difference. But we're allowed to have differences of opinion unless you think we can't, because we're all atheism plus, and we all can't be hypocrites. I don't know, but
together we're hypocritical.
Yes, because we can't be individuals. I know.
Oh.
I just you talk about how you constantly see women, they constantly suffer this barrage of abuse and stuff. Where is this being tolerated? I don't see this.
So because you don't have their inbox. So here, let me give you two quick examples. I'm married. My wife had the best podcast in Austin, according to the Chronicle, and it was a hugely favored by people. I know another individual who produces YouTube videos, and she came to Aaron to talk about the various death threats and hate-filled responses that she gets in email, and she said to Aaron, well, but, that's no surprise to you because I'm sure you get stuff like this all the time. And Aaron said no. And as a matter of fact, I don't either. And so when this individual does something wrong, what happens is people post modified pictures of their face with semen all over it. They'll send out rape threats and death threats. I don't get anything like that. And I've sat here with countless women in the movement talking about the sort of responses they get compared to the sort of responses I get. And I've also talked to the men in the movement. There's a clear delineation between the sort of responses and treatment that women get online than what I get and what other men get.
And you keep saying you don't see it, and I keep telling you, you can look up the studies, and you called it a meme and denied it. So just do your homework. Do your homework.
What I meant when I said that is, like, I hear it a lot in video games, like, you know, women are harassed in video games, and like, you know, all the sexism online and stuff. And I see a lot of articles about it, but I see a lot of, I see it a lot like, you know, is it possible that it's all just, you know, people get death threats all the time?
No, not as much. Not as much. There's a marked difference. We are telling you that there's evidence for that. If you're going to deny it just because you personally haven't experienced it, we don't really have anything to talk about. But as an experiment, maybe try just picking a female handle and going on any given website and post what you normally post, if that's what it takes for you to understand the difference. I mean, there have been men who, you know, created female dating profiles or female accounts on websites, and they have been shocked. They were just like you. They thought, oh, it's all bullshit, it's all made up, it's all in your head, hysterical woman. But when they actually put themselves in that position, they understood how bad it is. And so maybe that's the only thing that's going to get through to you, maybe.
I'd also recommend just doing a quick Google for dog and lizard privilege, and you'll find a great article that will explain this sort of thing. But on that note, let's try to get one other non-social justice-y call in before we wrap it up here for the day. Thanks, Jasper. It's one of the things when we try to have the conversations, you know, people they're terrified of what, you know, we heard about, oh, it's about free speech. No. First of all, my Facebook wall is mine. Mm-hmm. You can think I'm wrong for blocking you. You can think I'm wrong for setting it to friends only. That's fine. You can then go to your Facebook and talk shit about me all you want. Mm-hmm. But not allowing you access to my wall and my audience is not a violation of your free speech. Free speech is a legal thing at a government level.
And did you read the TOS when you joined Facebook? You don't have free speech on there. Yeah. They can ban you and block you and do all kinds of things to you based on things you say. So.